All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Michelle, and I'll be emceeing the session. The topic today is all about the key features and advantages of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Before we get started with the webinar, I want to cover the functionalities. During the session, everyone's microphones will be muted, but we want this to be an open discussion. So if there are any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will have a dedicated question and answer session after the presentation, but we'll try and get to your questions during the live session as well. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll share a copy with everyone near the end of the week. Our speaker today is Karen Relaford. Karen is our certified Oracle instructor who has been working with and teaching Oracle classes for over 25 years as a programmer, database administrator, consultant, and technical trainer. Her primary background is Oracle database and Oracle development tools. Karen is an Oracle certified professional, Oracle certified master, certified technical trainer, and modern classroom certified trainer. We're in for an informative discussion with a few demos. So let's get started. Karen, you can take it away.
All right, well, good day to everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. As Michelle mentioned, let me just get in. I'm gonna get into my slide deck here. So let's get things rolling. All right, so she introduced me. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move into the discussion that we're going to have. So what we want to take a look at and what I want to share with you, show you a few things and go over a few of these items. So we want to sort of talk about what makes Oracle Cloud a little bit unique from perhaps some of the other cloud products that are out there. Because we're not going to say that Oracle is the only one that is in this cloud arena. But really what we want to look at is sort of what makes Oracle Cloud a little bit unique. So what I'm also going to do at this point is I'm going to throw up a poll question here. All right. And just give this a second. And if you don't mind, share with us, because it'd be really interesting to find out. What cloud products are you considering or using right now? Again, our focus is going to be sort of what makes Oracle Cloud unique. What are the differentiators here? But it's always interesting to see what folks are using. All right, let's see. So we've got just a few. I'm going to leave it up for just a couple of seconds more to see what's going on. All right, so it looks like I've got quite a number of people that have answered that one. So let me go ahead and just give it another couple of seconds to see where we're at. All righty, and let me just end this and let's take a look at what we got for results. And there we go. So we can see, Oracle is certainly not the only cloud product that is in use right now. And what's interesting is some of the other ones, they're definitely up there. Let's go in and go back to our slides here. So let's go kind of get into what are some of the key differentiators. What does Oracle Cloud have that perhaps, I said, the others don't have or don't have in quite the same way? Right, so there's sort of 5 main areas that I'm going to mention and talk about here. First of all, this full stack of cloud offerings, because Oracle, as you know, also has an entire application suite, and they have an entire application suite that is also cloud-based, which is a little different than some of the other cloud vendors that are out there. So we'll talk about that one, the integration with the other applications, the other Oracle apps. I'm going to mention something in this cloud first delivery, which is an approach that Oracle's using when they're releasing their product lines. Spend a few minutes on autonomous database, right? And then most of the time, I'm going to talk about this tenancy compartment model, which is really kind of a security functionality that OCI has. Right. So in terms of the full suite of cloud solutions, realistically, I mean, Oracle is kind of the only one that has software as a service. That's Oracle software, Oracle applications, full-blown infrastructure as a service, of course, platform as a service. And some of the other the other cloud vendors certainly have multiples of these layers, but to really look at all of these in a full suite, this is something where, again, I think Oracle's is a little bit unique in that they have, especially the software as a service, that they can bring into the whole cloud arena. And then, of course, we do have a full-blown integration with Oracle third-party. Oracle products, third-party are products that are out there. And I'm going to just sort of switch gears here for a second. All right, and let's see if I can get into, there we go. So there's my Oracle Cloud infrastructure. And I'm going to start by just sort of showing you really quickly the Oracle Marketplace. If we go in and take a look at the Oracle Marketplace, we've got, I said, there's all applications. Anything under this all applications that's in here, by the way, right, all of this stuff is basically, vetted and asserted by Oracle that they will definitely work with Oracle Cloud. And, some of these are third party. Some of them are actually Oracle. If I go in, for example, and do a search on PeopleSoft here, you'll notice that we've got, integration with the PeopleSoft applications. So if you happen to be running PeopleSoft Campus Solutions, we're going to be able to look at integrating Campus Solutions, the cloud version of Campus Solutions, right into OCI. It's going to be just a few clicks to get it all configured and set up. Right? If you're using, Interaction Hub, financials, if you were using, JD Edwards, we've got the JD Edwards suite is in here. So all of these Oracle products, all of these Oracle software side of things, fully integrated in. And that's a little bit what we're talking about in here, right? Is all of these integrated tools. So I'm going to put up another quick little poll question here. So let me go in and I'm going to put up another one here because another thing that would be very interesting to find out and give everybody a couple of moments in here. What Oracle products are you currently using? Database, are you using the e-business suite and the Oracle Cloud apps? Are you looking or using any of the engineered solutions? Oh, we have some folks working on PeopleSoft, right? That's in here. I said, so other products like Primavera, WebLogic, the middle tier, right? Which, is compatible to something like WebSphere, but your middle tier stuff. Right. So we have an interesting mix. All right, so interesting, not too many folks on engineered solutions in this particular group. Anybody and playing with Application Express? I'm going to talk about that one in just a minute too. All right, so let me go ahead. Let's end this and just to show where folks are. So it looks like the vast majority, it's the database and WebLogic that we're seeing. Some folks on PeopleSoft, some people on JD Edwards and some of the other products that are out there. But definitely we seem to see a majority in two of what's considered the core products that Oracle has. So I'm not going to say I'm completely surprised by this. All right. Now, cloud first delivery. One of the things that Oracle has started to do, and they did this with the database 21C, and I'll sort of show you this in a second, but Oracle, as they're releasing new versions of their product, in particular their databases and some of their core products, one of the things that Oracle is doing is they are releasing things to the cloud before they're releasing it to on-premise download. So if we take just Oracle Database 21C, right, the latest, the greatest, the newest version of the Oracle database. Oracle Database 21C, right? If I go in and take a look at the software release, now this is the software download page, and there's my Database 21C, right? It is available for download now, right? There's several different flavors of it. There's Oracle Database on-prem for Linux, for Windows. But if I go in and take a look, all right, let's get into here. All right, I can go in and see Oracle Database 21C download. All right, I can pick my different platforms. So I'm just going to look at the Linux platform for here. But notice that it was published in August of 2021, August 13th. Oracle Database 21C was officially launched on January 13th, 2021. And it was launched to the cloud first. And even though it was officially launched on January 13th, 2021, it actually was available probably late December of 2020. But this is, again, one of the things that Oracle is starting to do with their cloud infrastructure is they're saying, you know, we're going to release this stuff to the cloud. So if you want to be on leading edge Oracle old products, then the cloud is the space that you want to be in, right? And the cloud's going to give you that ability to kind of get the first look and dive into some of the Oracle products. They are releasing, you know, the on-premise version of a lot of these, but, you know, 6 to 7 months after the initial product release. So that's, again, you know, if you're not using a lot of Oracle stuff, you may not be as concerned, but if you're like leading edge, and I've worked with a lot of students who've been, you know, they like to be on the leading edge. Their companies like to be on the leading edge. They want to, you know, be playing with the newest. And again, if you want that, then cloud's going to kind of be the direction that we want to go. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on autonomous database. Right? Autonomous database is Oracle's database in the cloud. Right? It is only available in the cloud. So the autonomous database is essentially a cloud-based database. And what they've done with autonomous database is they've said, you know, we're going to create a database product that we're going to have available in OCI. And if you want the power of running an Oracle database without the administrative workload of running an Oracle database, then the autonomous database is something you want to be aware of. Because what they've done is they automate a lot of the routine kind of work that we've had to do as database administrators. Now, when I started with Oracle, I started working with Oracle back in the days of Oracle 6. And I started teaching Oracle in the days of Oracle 7. Back then, it was all command line, on-prem, no GUI, almost no automation of anything. It all 100% fell on the laps of the administrators to look after. With the advent of autonomous database, things like tuning the SQL statements, locking the database down, performing backups, performing updates. All right, if you live in the world of Oracle, you are probably familiar with patches and updates. My goodness, we spend all sorts of time doing patches and updates. And these are automatically managed for you with the autonomous database. In the autonomous database, they have essentially two major flavors: data warehousing, right, which of course is going to be optimized for those big monster queries that we tend to run in databases. You know, what can we do to make sure those are coming back faster? It's, you know, perhaps a little bit more denormalized than what you would see in a transaction processing database. The other flavor, of course, is the transaction processing. So, the configuration and settings are going to lend themselves to, how quickly can we get those transactions done? How can we make sure those transactions are being protected? How do we make sure they're being written properly to the online redo logs and everything that kind of goes along with that? So here, and again, what's some of the key functionality? It's self-driving. So all the monitoring and tuning done for you. What does that mean for us as DBAs? That basically means we focus on the data, the modeling, the governance. We get away from the sort of routine kinds of activities and frees us up to spend a whole lot more time on let's make sure this database is well designed. Let's look at how we're summarizing our data. It's self-securing, right? There's all sorts of protection for attacks, self-repairing, and their clock time basically says that generally when it comes to autonomous database, they're saying less than 3 minutes per month of downtime, including all your patching. So if you're also looking for a solution that has a really high uptime, and again, a cloud-based solution that's fully integrated with all the other Oracle things you might be using, autonomous database, right, is something to consider, right? So we've got maximum uptime, less error prone, overall reduced costs, right, that we're going to be at least considering. So if we go in, let me go back over to here for a second. And I'll just kind of show you where autonomous database happens to live in the cloud. So I go into cloud and I go to Oracle database, right? And this is just, again, the OCI interface. And like any other graphical interface, definitely part of the challenge is just learning your way around the interface. But what you'll notice in here is that you've got the data warehouse, a new one, the JSON-based database, kind of document-oriented, transaction processing, right? And if I wanted to spin up an autonomous database, again, I want to have the power of an Oracle database. I don't want to have to deal with the management of the Oracle database, right? Maybe we don't have that full-blown skill set to manage an Oracle database, but we like what Oracle brings to the table. And this might be a good use case for this. So I'm going to go in and say, well, I'm going to look at, autonomous transaction processing. Give my system a moment to spin up. And in here, if I want to create an autonomous database, I'm going to come in and say, well, I want to create an autonomous database. So let's go ahead and I'm going to click in here and say, okay, what compartment? I'm going to come back to compartments. All right, what's the database name? Whatever I want to give it. All right, and then I said, let's get rid of this. All right, and we're going to say, what do you want for a database name? And you'll notice that it basically pre-populates these names, right? And you can go with that. You can put your own in. And then you get your choice of the database type. So I had chosen transaction processing, so it listed it here as pre-selected. Now, nobody really mentioned that they used Apex, but I'm going to do a quick call out to Application Express. If you are working with an Oracle database and you want a rapid application development tool that specifically works with Oracle, that is used to create web-based applications, you need to take a look at Application Express. It is a phenomenal development tool. I've been working with Apex since it was first introduced into Oracle way back when as HTML-DB, which is a long time ago and a lot of iterations ago. Then we decide what you want for your infrastructure. So I'm going to go basically shared infrastructure. And you'll notice that what they're going to do is they're going to spin this up on a shared Exadata system behind the scenes. All right, so then they're going to say configure the database, what database version, 19C for autonomous. All right, what do I want for the options? I'm not going to put in a whole lot of stuff here. I put in what you might want for a password for your admin account. All right. Then you can go in and also generate in here. Where do you want it? Secure access from everywhere. Do you want it to be in here? Oops. So it would help if I put the same password in. Should be the same password now. All right. Get out of here. There we go. I said, or do you want it from allowed so you can lock it down? All right. What are you doing for your license? Do you want license included? And basically in, just a few clicks, I could go in and say, create my autonomous database. It's going to spin it up. It's going to tell me how to access it. It's going to set up my admin password, and I'm going to be good to go. So that's how easy it is to spin up the autonomous database in the cloud. Definitely a very, very easy feature. This is where I'm going to kind of spend the next few minutes. I want to talk a little bit. And to me, by the way, the compartment and tenancy model that Oracle has in the cloud, I think this is one of the key things that is unique from other cloud vendors. So when we talk about a tenancy in OCI, that's essentially your account that you create, right? The tenancy is created when you sign up, and it has something called the root container, which is the main container that we have, right? And the administrators created for it. And within the tenancies, we can create something called compartments. Now, a compartment is not the same as a virtual cloud network, virtual private network. We use the virtual private networks, right? And the virtual cloud networks, we use those to isolate which resources can talk to one another, right? But the networks, the virtual cloud network, doesn't isolate security per se. You know, it'll say, well, this resource, this cloud database, or this cloud resource, or this cloud VM is able to talk to this cloud VM because they're both on the same virtual cloud network, the same VCN. What it doesn't do is say, well, I have a user Karen 1 and I have a user Karen 2, and I want Karen 1 to have access to these resources, and I want Karen 2 to have access to these resources. And I do not want to necessarily have multiple OCI accounts to accomplish that. Right? Because one of the ways that you can separate from a security perspective which users have access to what resources you're creating in the cloud is, and the way we do it in some of the other vendors is we would actually create multiple accounts and then create users in those different accounts, and then they have access to the resources in that account. With the compartment tenancy model that OCI has, we don't actually need to create separate accounts to get that kind of isolation. All right. So this is how we can organize and set this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of switch gears, and I'm going to go back into my cloud infrastructure and sort of show you how this all works. Now, right now I'm logged in as my administrator account, just to make sure that folks are clear on where I am and who I'm logged in with. But I'm currently logged in with an administrator account. And so I'm going to go into my identity and security area. And so because this, again, this is for me one of the big ones. And inside here, I can go in and I can create my compartments. So I've got a few compartments that are already created. Right? If I want to create a new compartment, right, I can go in and say, well, I want to create a compartment. I'm going to give it a name. Call it C3 for lack of anything better. All right. And then it's going to say, I have to put a description in. And then it's going to say, where am I building it? Now notice it's automatically putting this one in that root compartment. The root compartment is the one that's created when you first create your tenancy or first create your cloud account. Okay. And create compartment, and just like that, all right, there's my third compartment. Now, along with this, of course, and along with the compartments, the biggest thing that is part of this compartment is, okay, so how does this lend itself to security? Right, that's really kind of what we want to look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm going to set up a security group. Okay, groups is one of the main ways that we manage security. And I'm going to create a group here. I'm going to call this one Karen G3, put in a description, Karen G3, create a group. So there's a group. I can create your groups very quickly, and groups are used again as one of the primary ways to grant privileges or assign policies to your users. Just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to create a user. So I'm going to create a user in here. Now, when you go to create a user, again, more of a sort of a side note for the users, there's a couple of different ways you can create users in Oracle. Do you want them as a cloud service authenticated through a single sign-on functionality, which is the recommended way for creating users and not the way that I'm actually going to create this one? Or do you want it as a regular IAM user, which is going to have access to the infrastructure, but not necessarily all of your cloud platform services? So it's a little bit restricted. I'm going to go in and say, well, I want to create a user called Karen User 3. And put in my description. Let's get rid of my, go away. All right, put in my description here. 3. Now you'll also probably notice here, now I said it's saying creating a local user, which is fine. Notice that it's not asking me for any kind of username or password. I just want, again, a little bit things that I always want to point out as I'm building this. So it's going to create the user. Okay, there's my Karen User 3. And when I want Karen to be able to start connecting, one of the things I need to do is I need to be able to assign the password. So I'm going to go in and say, well, I'm going to create a password for this account. Click on create a password. Now, what's going to happen is Cloud is actually going to generate the initial password. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Notice here it says, copy this someplace. It is not going to be shown again. There's not a way to get back to that original password. All right, close this off. All right, so now I've got the password for that Karen user account. What'll happen is if I go in, and let's say I want to log in as Karen. So let me sign out from user. I'm going to log in with that new account. All right, so I'm going to say, well, I want to do a direct sign in. Paste in the password that I copied earlier. It's going to force me immediately to change my password. Save my new password. I'm all set. So now let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign out from this user momentarily and sign back in as my root user. So let's go back over to the security area here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and assign Karen to that group that I created. So there's my user 3. I'm going to assign to group 3. And then this is where the security piece comes into play. So I created a compartment, okay, called C3. I created a user and a group. All right, that basically said, okay, I've got the user 3, group 3. And now what I'm going to do is I want to sort of say, okay, I want to give or create a policy. All right, and I'm going to create a policy here. And the compartment I'm going to put this in is the main root compartment. Right, so because I'm logged in as an administrator. So I'm creating a policy in the root. I'm going to call this one Parent Policy 3. And then I'm going to go in and say for this particular policy, let me put in here. Three, right? Or I'm going to just use basically the policy builder. When you build the policies, you can indicate, is this for managing accounts, managing compartments? You can break it down. This one's going to be for all, but it's the templates. And in here, when you want to give access, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give access to the group, basically to my group G3. I want to go ahead and I'm going to give them the ability to access one specific compartment. And that's kind of what my ultimate goal is here. So I can go in here and say, well, I can manage admins. What I want to look at in here is I want to look at managing the objects, which is the object storage. So let me just roll down till I can find my objects. All right, volumes, create file systems, there it is. All right, so here I'm going to go in and say, I want to basically allow this group of storage admins to manage buckets and objects. And so this is going to be basically the object storage. That's the one I'm going to pick. And then they're going to say, okay, well, which group would you like to assign this to? Group 3. And then which compartment are they going to be allowed to create buckets in? And I'm going to go and say, well, group 3 will be allowed to work with these objects, basically object storage, in compartment C3 and only compartment C3. Go ahead and click on create. So the policy is now created, it's been added, and notice the statements. Allow group Karen G3 to manage buckets in compartment C3. Allow Karen, group Karen G3 to manage objects in those compartments. So that was all done for me. But what's really cool is this breakdown into the compartments. That is sort of the neat piece. So now let me go ahead and sign out. And I'm going to sign back in as my user 3 that I just created. All right, so I'm going to come in here. Sign in. And so now I'm going to go into storage and say, okay, I want to go into storage. I want to work with buckets. And it's going to come in here. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, you need to pick a compartment where you might like to create your buckets for object storage. And if I expand in and take a look, my only choice that's in here, if I try to go to root, it's going to come back and say, you can't put things in root. Sorry, guess what? You're not allowed. But you may have noticed when I showed you my compartments, if you kind of remember, I actually had 3 compartments. I had C1, C2, and C3. But the only compartment that I can access right now, because of the compartments and because of the security that said, hey, you can do this and only in C3, the only compartment I can choose is C3. And I can say, okay, create a bucket, give it a name. I'm not going to, encryption, right? They're automatically encrypted. You got all the other options here. Go ahead and click on create. And just like that, I was able to create a bucket in that specific compartment. And this is certainly an area, I think, in OCI, in the way that Oracle manages this security, that is really quite different from the other cloud products that I have worked with. And I've worked with several of them. So I don't just work with Oracle Cloud. I have actually worked with several other Oracle products as well. And this is, to me, one of the biggest differentiators, is the way that Oracle created this and this security model. Right. So that's kind of the tenancy compartment. This is where I really wanted to focus, is what I see as one of the biggest unique factors and differentiators with OCI from some of the other products that are out there. And again, it doesn't mean to say that it's the only one, but I think this is one of the big ones. All right. Now, kind of changing gears a little bit. I just want to mention a little bit, of course, around the whole education arena. Oracle does have specific certifications for Oracle Cloud. Right? You may be familiar with like your OCP, the Oracle Certified Professional, the Oracle Certified Master for a lot of their on-prem stuff, but they also do have certifications for Oracle Cloud. So there is a certified associate, an OCI certified professional, and they do have a number of specialist level certifications. So if this is going to be an arena that you're going to be working in and you want to go for the distinction that certification brings to the table, these are constantly being updated, by the way. The older ones are being retired, the newer ones are being replaced. So the most current is the 2021 OCI certifications. Hopefully, folks are saying, I might need to learn a little bit more about OCI. And with that, of course, we want to talk a little bit about sort of what are the training options for OCI. If you want to learn more about what I showed you, if you want to learn more about the security and the compartments and spinning up your virtual machines and spinning up, building up the networks that we need to have in place and creating the, Oracle databases and the integration functionality. Of course, you obviously want to be aware of what training is available to you. And so as we start talking about this, I'm going to throw up another poll question really quick here. All right. And the other poll question I've got here is, do you have a preference in how you like to take training? So let's go ahead and throw that one up and give everybody a minute, all right, to take a look at this one. Do you prefer instructor-led private classes? Are you more into instructor-led, I just like to sign up for public training? Are you more into self-paced? Give me my self-paced and I'll learn it, kind of, as I go. All right, so give everybody just another moment or two to fill this one out. So we'll end this one up really quick here. Share the results. And this is, by the way, pretty well what I was expecting to see. What I do find, and again, 25 years of doing the training, I do find that the majority of folks really prefer instructor-led. Not to say that there isn't a place for the self-paced training. There absolutely is. There's a lot of advantages to it. But I do generally, again, find that the majority, and we're seeing that even here, majority of people like that instructor-led training. Right? So if we kind of look at the instructor-led, there's live labs, there's hands-on. I'm going to show you a list in a moment of some of the OCI classes, specifically for OCI, that are actually available to you as instructor-led training. We can offer these as virtual classes, live virtual classes. So it's instructor led, but very much like we're doing with this webinar. It's all virtual, no travel required. Don't have to be there in person. It's been pretty big going to this virtual world over the last little while. We can run these as public classes. We can run classes as private in person, right? And just to kind of give you an idea of some of the classes that are available. The infrastructure admin essentials, that's going to go over some of the basics. How do you create your virtual private cloud? How do you spin up a VM in the cloud? How can you spin up like an autonomous database? It does cover the security stuff, right? Some of the stuff that I was showing you in terms of the compartment model and how that tenancy account is broken down. That's covered in the administration essentials, right? The infrastructure operations, that's more for the folks that are doing the day-to-day work in the cloud, not necessarily building it up, but managing it once it's created. Architecting Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Solutions, basically it's the more advanced class, all right? The essentials is kind of your introductory class. The architecting is a little bit more in depth on a lot of these options. If you're interested in autonomous database, we have one specifically on autonomous database. We have another one on, well, what if I've got databases on the cloud or on-prem that I want to move? All right, that's what we're going to talk about in migrating. High availability and disaster recovery. You may be thinking, well, doesn't Oracle do that automatically? Depends on what resources you're talking about. And one of the things to understand is that while the cloud is a lot of good things, there's things that you would actually have to set up and configure for that. If you have rack databases, well, rack's a little different than a single instance database. If you want to play with Apex, we have classes on Apex. And again, this is not the only thing that's there. Let me just quickly look at, I do see a quick question here. So Miles, I'm going to get back to you in just a couple of seconds. We'll talk about that one. Yes. So I'll come back to that. There's also, of course, there is self-paced training available, right? So there's Oracle learning subscriptions. There's no instructor-led class if you go with the learning subscription. Some of them may have environments, many of them do not. So that's a little bit on training. So that just got through that so we can get to the Q&A part here. So one of the questions that I have here, it says, looks like autonomous database goes further toward fully managing the database than other platform as a service offerings. Is that the case? Yes, Miles, absolutely. Autonomous database does go much further than something like the RDS for Oracle. The other thing that you'll get with the autonomous database, besides the fact that Oracle does manage it much more in depth than what you would get with another vendor that supports Oracle, is you actually will get access in many cases to newer releases of Oracle sooner. Because what Oracle, what AWS configures for Oracle is always dependent on sort of what they can get their hands on. So you may find that not only is Oracle more definitely much more integrated with the autonomous database and automating everything, it's also generally going to have access to the newer releases.
Another question, Karen.
Yes.
Is there a limit to how many compartments can be nested?
It is a limit of 6, but there is no limit that I am aware of as to the number of compartments that you can create. You probably wouldn't want to create more than 6 nested compartments. And yes, I didn't really mention, but yes, compartments can be nested. So you can have a compartment, for example, for Department A, And then underneath that, have a compartment for dev, test, and QA. And you can go, within dev, you could nest it further. Whether you'd want to go beyond 6, well, you can't, but I'm not even sure you'd really want to go beyond 3 because it becomes a real logistical nightmare after that. But 6 is the limit for nesting, and I'm not aware of an upper limit for the number of compartments you can create.
Thank you. Another question. Are there any cloud training which would help someone move their on-prem Oracle EBS financial system to the cloud?
Now, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of anything that really does the app. So I'd actually have to do a little bit of investigating. I do know that they have plenty for moving your databases, but I'm not sure what they've got for on-prem. Let me just take a quick look and see if I could see anything. But migrating the on-prem stuff, I'm not aware of too much in that arena, unfortunately. Let's see, migration, there we go. Yeah, so we've got migrations. There we go, application migration documentation. I don't know if there's any training on it, but it does look like if you go into OCI and go into migration, over on the related and help, it does look like they've got some documentation for migrating your applications. All right, so at least if nothing else there, you probably do have some help there. But I am not aware of any specific instructor-led training that would do this.
Another question we often see is the content delivered in the instructor-led courses, is it authorized Oracle content?
Yes, absolutely. Anything that we offer at ExitCertified Tech Data, anything that we offer is Oracle certified, Oracle official curriculum. The environments are Oracle official curriculum that we run on. And all of the instructors are certified by Oracle to be teaching the classes. So it is absolutely all certified.
Another question we often hear is wondering if the content can be tailored to the company's specific needs.
We can tailor classes. So if you're looking for a private training event and you want certain areas covered in more depth and other areas maybe we want to spend a little less time on, absolutely, we can tailor and customize the training to meet your specific needs. We won't be able to do that for any publicly offered classes, but we can absolutely do that for any private on-site training or private virtual events that you might want.
That's great. And I want to just invite the audience to post any other questions they may have in the Q&A. And as those are coming in, why don't you flip to the next slide? And I can tell the audience why you may ask yourself why you should choose ExitCertified for your Oracle training needs. Well, I can tell you that professionals like you have been training with us since 2001. And you want to know that your training provider has the credibility to earn your organization's trust. ExitCertified delivers. Vendor authorized IT training is our only business. And when you train in our facilities, you'll find well-equipped classrooms with friendly staff who are dedicated to making your learning experience comfortable and productive. And when you train remotely, you'll see that our investment in technology makes our online learning every bit as engaging as training you take in person. Let me tell you a little bit more about why you should take your Oracle training with ExitCertified. And Karen, if you could move to the next slide. Right now, we are offering an exclusive webinar savings opportunity. You can save up to $200 off any Oracle training, whether that's virtual, classroom, or subscription. Now, this is a limited time offer. You need to register by November 30th, 2001. And I'm going to drop a link to all of the details around this opportunity in the chat window now. I'm not seeing any other questions coming through, so I think that tells that you gave a thorough explanation of Oracle in the cloud. If anybody does have questions that come to mind later on, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Not only can you browse our entire list of courses on our website, but you'll also see the option on where you can contact us. And I've left that link in the chat window as well. As a reminder, we've recorded this session and we'll send a copy out to everyone who registered near the end of the week. Karen, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you all for joining us.
Take care, all.